I made no changes. It was perfect as presented.
And he didn't have any corrections, so that's what actually Julie said. So if we're ready to vote on the consent agenda, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, so we have passed the consent agenda. Moving on to the calendar review, really just the agenda planning for the 17th. So at this point too, we are scheduled to be at Hartford. We are just making sure that that is clear. Like we're working on making sure we have the amount of space that we need. So we're 90% positive it will be at Hartford, but just to put that out there. So that will be our next meeting on October 17th. And now we are looking at agenda planning. I did want to put out there, we usually go to the Teacher of the Year school, but that school doesn't have capacity to host us. So we are a needy guest now. So we asked for at least 100 seats, so that way we can have guests come. And so that's not something every school is able to do. So they were not able to, and that's why Hartford stepped up and they were able to do that. So we're thinking about agenda planning, so next steps. That's exactly where we're at. So if we're looking at the list that we just came up with, and just going back to something that was thrown out earlier, that we take off the possible, if you want to take that first and looking at the state plan, because that's pretty straightforward. If it's not possible, there's any combination of statutory that's prohibited, that's a pretty easy way to start. So is that something that we want to start looking at the possible at our next board meeting? And that way anybody that's up for in consideration under the Secretary's plan under possible will come to us and have a provisional vote.
Could we ask the agency to staff that out and simply give us a list, which I presume would be 0, of the Secretary's proposals that are not possible?
I think that's already on page 185. So page 185 in the Secretary's report, it lays out which ones are not possible.
But we're talking about are we talking about the AGS proposals or the Secretary's proposal?
The Secretary's proposal, because they cannot be merged because they are unlike districts. So those are the lists on page 185. And so with a couple, there's a couple in there that are not practicable too, but I think that's an easy list that we can go through. Donna?
They're not possible, but I think it brings in a practicability with geography, actually. It's not possible because there is no other district near them that has the same structure. And those were decisions 34 through 43 that the Secretary said they weren't possible or practicable or both. So I think you could say that they are not possible, but you might want to look at the geography just to see if you agreed with what the Secretary's proposal of geography was.
So do we want to start there with almost a backwards, so starting with the 34 through 43, those plans, and those would be the ones that were deemed not possible or practicable, and then we could go from there.
We're eating dessert first.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's an easy test for the
I'll bring dessert.
non-contiguous language.
Yeah. Okay. So so for our agenda planning, we could start with 34 through 43.
Do we expect to spend time on those or one motion for that group?
And Donna, you can advise us. We need a vote on each of these, correct? Or could they be on as a group?
I think it would be better to vote on each, even if the vote is very simple. It would just be better. I think it's cleaner if you do that.
Okay. So,
And I'm sorry. Just one other thing that kind of plays into this is that we were going to talk about just the decision points document today, but I think that it's probably too late in the day to talk about anything that's that technical. But I would urge you to read this first page and try to understand what the numbers mean. But you're going to need to decide how you're going to make the decisions, I think, and whether the 43 different options that we had are the right options.
so do people want to review that document before we do the 34 through 43?
I think we should.
Yeah.
Krista, can I ask, are we going to vote, are we going to do like a rolling vote through like October, November, or are we going to say like push bins, here's where we think we're leaning, and then on one day, we vote on all of them, boom, 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 boom.
Well, so, and so just getting some advice about having a vote for each of these, it'd also be advisable, I think we talked about this last meeting, to have a vote that was saying to add this to the final state plan, and then take one final vote on the state plan. So it'd be a motion to add it to the state plan. So that way, each of these would be, make a motion to accept the secretary's proposal and instance number, whatever that is, and add it to the state plan. At the very end, we would do one final vote on the whole state plan. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Yeah, no, if it doesn't.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's gonna be any point where we get further down in the conversation and we won't wanna have voted on A until we've decided what we wanna do about T.
Right, and so, and that's why if we just add it, say we add it to the plan, that is a way you can remove something from the final plan too.
Okay.
So that way it's adding things and taking a vote at the end. John?
Back to the not possibles. I don't understand why, if we concur that a proposal is not possible, we spend any time worrying about whether it's practicable. Since what possible is about what the statute says. And I could imagine that we might do the work of satisfying ourselves that the secretary is correct in her assessment that they are not possible. Remember, our job is to ascertain for ourselves if the claims or representations of the secretary have merit by our views. And so I think the first test is it or is it not possible? Is the secretary's recommendation or assessment correct? If it's correct, there's nothing else to talk about.
And we just take a vote.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
say that we confirm the secretary's
Exactly.
assessment. We don't need to get into any practicability for those cases. We have enough of those to
If it's not
deal with
possible.
later.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's why we're starting with that first, just to, we'll take those votes, it should be hopefully fairly quick, and if there's one that we need to spend more time with,
Well, we should at least have a due diligence discussion. Are we satisfied that the secretary is correct in this case specifically,
Right,
that this is
case by
not
case.
possible?
Right.
Yes, no?
So once we move on to that, it becomes what is the will of the board and how do we want to look at these different subjects? The secretary organized them in a way that we could make sure that we're not making decision one way in one district and one way in another by looking at putting all the traditional UHSDs together, by putting the MUDs together. Do you want to continue in that way so that way we can ensure that we're not making decisions differently in the north than we are in the south?
I think that's wise.
And so should we start at the top of the list then, in the list and looking at traditional UHSDs and then moving down to the MUDs and then USDs with unlike members, so going in that order. And the tricky part is anticipating how far to go down the list. And are we saying in the October 17th meeting and what we warn, we need to make sure that we're warning any potential vote. So how far do we want to warn the entire thing? And maybe we'll know ones we're pulling off. This is where I need to know the will of the board as we're making the agenda. And this is a quick turnaround again, because today is November 2nd. We are meeting October 2nd. We're meeting October 17th. So this is
And then
2
what's
weeks.
the next one?
What?
And then the next one is,
November 14th, and then another one scheduled for November 28th. So I just need to know the will of the board, so that way we can warn a meeting. And knowing that we may not get to all of them, I think it's important to make sure that we do our best effort to get.
I would warn them all, so we
Yeah.
have flexibility, because we don't want to be constrained.
Okay.
And then just adjourn if we don't get through it.
Okay, so, and we'll go through in the existing order that's here, so we'll do the last ones first, and then go back to the beginning and move through there.
And we may revisit, so I think we should be careful in any subsequent meetings to warn everything, so we always have the flexibility to go
Yeah,
back and
yep.
adjust.
Okay, that's what I was, yes, John?
If I recall correctly from the calendar that we had, there was a note that we would have 2 hours for this work at the next